Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm here with Daniel from Daniel at Driving D&D YT on Twitter. He has a YouTube channel, and I'll have links to that in the description along with his Twitter link. Daniel, how you doing today?
Doing good, man. Covered in cats.
I could think of worse ways to be.
I can too, but I got two of them who decided they wanted to be part of this.
Well, tell me, Daniel. This is a question that I ask everybody, and some people hate, and some people don't care. How did you first get into tabletop RPGs?
Just high school friends, or really middle school friends, and my older brother. Um, I started playing in the '90s when I was just towards the end of junior high.
Okay. See, I graduated high school in '92, so yeah, I'm a couple of years older than you.
Yeah, just a few, just a few.
What drew you to become a game master?
Um, I'm, I've always been kind of a writer. Um, I have a chronic world builder syndrome in a big way. I am constantly trying to come up with, or not even trying, I'm just constantly thinking up new worlds, new situations, new puzzles, new ideas that would be, cool for a storyline and that sort of thing. And I like to build those worlds, make them functional, and put people in them and see how they react to those situations. So being the forever GM was always kind of that was always just kind of where I was going to end up. I do love playing a character, but I like creating worlds way more than creating characters.
Okay, I'm the same way. I spend a lot of time just world building for the hell of it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Just putting stuff together and finding out ways to change it. I did a series on my channel a while back. I need to reshoot it just because the audio is not so great on it. That is really about using history in your tabletop games as a game master to create new things. And I'm real big on that. I like making anachronistic situations, and I like trying to figure out how certain real world situations would play out with magic or with other fantastical elements added to them, how they would change things. And it's just a lot of fun for me to do that. And I started, believe it or not, I didn't start with D&D. I started as a cyberpunk player,
Okay.
and I got real big into D&D not long after that because that's what a lot of friends played. That's what my older brother played. But my first tabletop role playing game was Cyberpunk.
Yeah, well, when I first started, it was the red box. So
There wasn't a Cyberpunk around back then,
no,
not yet anyway.
not back in '82, or if there was, I'd never heard of it.
Well, I think the original Cyberpunk was like '87.
Hmm. And the first cyberpunk style game I ever played was Shadowrun.
Oh, Shadowrun. That nothing like having to have 500 D6s.
Yeah, which I think I have that anyway with the amount of dice that I have.
Yeah, you just can't ever find the ones you need.
Of course not.
That's like try
See,
digging looking for a D30 or one of those oddball. Like I got a D13.
I've got a D30 actually. I just don't know where I
I got a
put it.
couple. I got a couple of D30s, couple D30s, couple of D100s. I got some of the odd numbered dice, the 7 and the 13, and I got 16s and 24s. Bunch of dice that have no real reason like to exist. I don't know any games that use them, but I find uses for them. I'm big time homebrew guy.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
always trying to make new and exciting and entertaining things to tweak the system a little bit, change things a little here or there. I, um, I borrow things a lot. I'm big on that. Like I put the Call of Cthulhu luck mechanic in just about everything. And the D30, I had a D30. I'm like, I've got no idea why I have a D30. So the D30 became the critical failure die, And it's like, oh, you rolled a natural 1. Well, guess what? We're going to roll this D30, and depending on how high it is how bad things are going to get.
Ooh. No, you say you've run Cyberpunk, you've run D&D, and you mentioned Call of Cthulhu. You run that too?
I've never run Call of Cthulhu. I've just played it a couple of times.
Okay.
And the big thing about it is that I do look at a lot of different games, even some that I haven't run. I'll talk to different game masters about it, talk to different players about it, play it if I have the chance. But I'm always looking for decent mechanics and other things that make sense to me. And it's great. I think this is one of the things that playing predominantly 3.5 Dungeons and Dragons kind of taught me and really teaches a lot of game masters is 3.5 D&D was extraordinarily modular. It was all about knowing what pieces to put in to form the right game to fit your world. If you tried to run everything, you were going to have a bad time. It's a nightmare. There's way too much stuff. If you try to run just the bare bones, it ends up being too generic. You got to know which pieces of the puzzle to pull out and put together. And there's no reason why that can only be done with Dungeons and Dragons supplement books. Why can't I take the luck mechanic, that D100 luck mechanic, out of Call of Cthulhu and plug it into Dungeons and Dragons? And when I talk to a D&D player who has no idea how a luck mechanic works, I'll tell them. I'll say, it's real simple. You know those arrows that you don't have on your character sheet? And your whole argument is, well, I'm a ranger. I'd have my arrows with me. I just forgot to put them there. Like, fine, go ahead and roll the dice. If you roll under your luck score, then you got your arrows. If you roll over your luck score, well, yeah, you're a ranger. You have arrows. You left them at the end. So they're back in town, thrown over the bar stool or something. You know, you forgot your wallet. And that's the easiest way I can think of to kind of tell people about that mechanic. And what I started doing is when I was playing either D&D or Cyberpunk or whatever I was playing, it was, you'd see a hole. And we all do this as game masters. We play and we see a hole in the system. And it's frustrating because we need something to fix it. Something doesn't work quite right. And if you learn to look for your answers when you're not thinking about them, it makes life a lot easier. Because anytime I'm listening to somebody say do a review of a new game, and they're talking about this fate mechanic or this push mechanic or this bonus dice mechanic or whatever the case may be, in my head, I'm playing through situations saying, what problem did I have that could be solved by this mechanic? And if I find one, I'm stealing that mechanic and it's going to be used later next time a similar situation comes up. And my tables always end up being these hodgepodges of, 15 different TTRPGs as opposed to just Cyberpunk Red or Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 or whatever the case may be.
So you do a lot of modification to the system rules. The big debate currently on Twitter is the Paladin debate. What's your stand on that?
Paladins are lawful good, plain and simple. If you're, at least as long as you're using an alignment system, they're lawful good. A paladin is a righteous, holy warrior, and they are dedicated. Like, is where a paladin comes from is they come from the highest order of knights under the Holy Roman Emperor Charlemagne. They're like the kind of the Knights of the Round Table of Charlemagne. And they are dedicated to the predominant church, and they are dedicated to the law, the law and order that it upholds. Paladins don't really work otherwise. Now, you can have fallen paladins or blackguards. The blackguard mechanic in 3.5 works really well. It's a great mechanic to have. Dragonlance does it really well with the Knights of Takhisis versus the Knights of Solamnia. And it works out well. But a paladin is not just some knight who swears an oath to do something. They are a righteous defender they're a righteous defender of the faith, of morality. They're a cut above just being lawful. And you can think about it in the romantic terms of, your middle-aged like French court culture, where you have that idea of chivalry comes in. A knight was not just supposed, like if you look at the knightly virtues that are supposed to compose chivalry, they all of the different characteristics are lawful or good in terms of D&D. Because alignment, one of the big debates I get into a lot, alignment is my favorite soapbox. But alignment is black and white. It's rigid. It has very clearly defined parameters. It's a 1,000-yard view. It's not a microcosm. It's not a microscope to put under every single individual action. It's more of the guiding principles and the guiding core morality of the character themselves and their character and how they conduct themselves. It's a 1,000-yard view, but it says it clearly in just about every D&D book coming up all the way through 4th edition. When you read about alignment, it's like, hey, these are not nebulous concepts. It's not your good and my good. It's like these are definitive. These are clearly defined parameters within the cosmos that everything operates on. So selfless behavior is good. Now, you can debate whether or not right or wrong. That can be a personal thing. You can think you're doing right and be doing evil all day long. But there is a list of values that determines good, law, chaos, evil. And that's the only way that mechanic can work in game. It has to have clearly defined parameters. Otherwise, we're all just circle jerking because you have your good, I have my good, so nobody's good actually matters. If you look at a paladin based off of those knightly virtues, based off of that chivalry, you're talking about things like charity, grace, forgiveness, justice. You're talking about honesty. You're talking about honorable behavior and seeking out the righteous solution. These are both good and lawful characteristics. And you can call them a paladin all you want to, but the second you stray away from those, you're no longer a paladin. You're just a knight. And you get the people who come in, like I believe when I was reading one of your articles, you were talking about how it's like, what happens when the law conflicts with what's good. That goes back to it being that 1,000-yard stare. Those conflicts are what make the character interesting. Those are what make the struggle and the fight. Like a big part of the Demormont French court scene between Lancelot and Guinevere, because that's Lancelot and Guinevere came from French writers much later in the Arthurian mythos. Well, the whole thing about Lancelot and Guinevere was the great tragedy of will they, won't they? They both want to, but they both have to stay away from it. Mm-hmm. And the struggle between the law and the law and the love, and what that fight is what makes Lancelot a character. Lancelot is functionally a paladin who then falls because of his inability to stay within his alignment in a big way. That's basically what that classic Lancelot is. So you got to have that. It doesn't work if you don't have that kind of that good and lawful alignment for a paladin. You're just playing a knight who likes to say I'm a paladin at that point.
Well, we disagree slightly on the paladin issue, which I have no problem with. Your table, your rules. For my views, check out TTRPG, TTRPGmayhem.wordpress.com. And look,
it's a good article. It's worth a read.
Thank you. So what are some of your favorite resources for world building? What do you like to use?
History is probably one of my biggest ones. I love history. And I love taking historical situations and crafting, because it makes it easy to craft a world for a game. One of the biggest things that can kill a world builder, in my opinion, is they get too lost in trying to be Tolkien.
Yep.
They're trying to go all the way back to the dawn of time and flesh out everything. And that's if you have a really detailed world builder. On the opposite end of the chain, you have these people who, this is my world, and it's like, well, why is any of this happening? None of this makes sense, because there's no reason that nation would be fighting this nation, or you would have this evil guy trying to conquer this piece of land or something. You don't have enough history or anything behind it. But if I take something like, say, the Napoleonic Wars, and I can go sci-fi or cyberpunk with it, and everybody's got laser guns and rail guns and cybernetic arms and crazy stuff. I can go make it high fantasy with dragons and magic and all kinds of other stuff. I can go way back and do sword and sorcery style with low magic and Conan the Barbarian type. But I can take the Napoleonic Wars and I can look at that snapshot of history, and I know why everybody was doing what they were doing, because I have an entire field of study called history that tells me why England did this, why France did this, why Russia did this, why the Austrians did this, what led up to it, what caused it to happen. I have those pieces, and as a game master who's wanting to have a realistic, lived-in world that everybody can see and believe in, I've just made a shorthand for myself simply by taking that historical setting and making the necessary changes to make it fit whatever I'm doing. And then, of course, I have to ask the questions. Well, if Napoleon had a dragon, how would that have changed things? Maybe Russia's not so big of a problem when you got a red dragon who can just melt all that snow for you. But but you can take those little things and you can pull big, larger than life characters out of them and kind of know how they would behave. If I take Nathan Bedford Forrest and make him an opposing general, regardless of what alignment he is, I know what his character's like from his letters and his writings and from contemporary stories about him as a general in the American Civil War. And then when my players have to encounter him, I can get in my head and say, okay, this is Nathan Bedford Forrest. This is how he behaves. This is the type of man he is. So when they talk to him, I know how he's going to react. I know the kind of things he's going to say back to them and the way he's going to respond to things. And I have a believable character. So history is a huge, huge influence for me and inspiration in my world building, just because it just makes life really easy. You've got all you have to do is do a what if scenario, and you can tweak and change.
Now, when you start world building, do you start with a map or do you start with an idea?
Generally, I'm going to start with an idea. Really, a lot of times I start with a theme. I think that's one of the biggest problems that a lot of early new game masters get into when they start trying to put something together, is that they lack a cohesive theme for their game. So I might say I want to have some kind of a slave revolt story. That may be what I want my basis to be. I'm thinking, like some kind of, against the odds slave revolt story, oppressive nation type deal. So like, what can I do? I can take, we'll take the American Civil War. Well, the American Civil War, and I mean, God knows I'm about to get some hate online for this. In all the terms of, in terms of slavery, probably not the most oppressive slavery you can think of. Horrible, bad, wrong, evil, definitely oppressive, but not just, it wasn't like penalty enslavement like the Romans, where it's like you're here to get beaten and fed to lions and stuff like that because you pray to the wrong god or you were a traitor to the Roman people or whatever. It's a forced labor situation, not as oppressive as, say, Nazi Germany, definitely a more oppressive form of slavery when the entire goal is to wipe your race out. But I can take that and I can say, okay, what do I want to make worse? What do I want to make more evil? What do I want to make less evil? What do I want to make? Where do I want to put my players in it? Do I want my players to be like, to use the Civil War example, do I want them to be knights from the Union land who are coming down and saying just how bad it really is down here? Because a lot of people don't think about that. In the American Civil War, most of the Union soldiers were fighting to keep the Union together. They really didn't care that much about slavery, as but once they started marching through the South, especially the deep cotton states, and they saw the kind of things that would happen, and especially when you're talking about Sherman's going through the South, and things are really dire down there in a military perspective. They start seeing the things that are happening, and they have to confront it in person. Then all of a sudden you find a lot more, when you read their journals and whatnot, you find a lot more Union soldiers who are really fighting to end slavery as opposed to just keep the Union together, or because they signed up for military service or whatever the case may be. Because once they saw it and they were confronted with it, they said, this has to stop. So maybe my players are from this nation up here and they come down into this other country and they see this evil, and now they, as these small people who have small power, they're low level, now they have a personal mission to try and fix this great evil down here because I've shown it to them. Maybe that's the path I take. Maybe they're in the South and they have a problem with it to begin with, and they want to fight from the inside up. But I can take that whole thing and run that theme through it and look through history and say, I want to take this. I want to take that. I want to take a piece over here and put them all together to build the world that I need.
Okay.
And that's kind of it's not a system as much as this. I'm definitely, when it comes to world building, I tend to be more of a seat of the pants kind of person. I don't have like a listed out step by step. I'm going to do this map. I'm going to populate it with these people. I'm going to have these political lines. I'm going to figure out how geography plays in and let it play out in my head. And then this is where we're at. I tend to be a lot more seat of the pants. And it's like, I had an idea. Do I need to start with a map, or do I need to start with political lines, or do I need to start with geographic features? Like, do I need this country over here to be mineral rich and this one to be very poor for this to work?
I see how you're saying. My approach is a little different. I start with a map and then let the map inform me about where people live. And from there, then I develop a theme.
It's a perfectly good way to world build, because even if you say, take my own philosophy of like using history, you can look at your map and you can say, okay, this is very similar to these nations, climate, location, terrain, etc. Well, why does that nation behave that way? Well, they behave that way because they have these resources. Okay, that's where this culture is developed. And you just build a living, breathing world, and then play play the unmoved mover and sit back and watch it play out in your head and say, okay, I'm going to put my players there.
Yep.
It's definitely not a bad way to do it.
Now, moving away from world building, do you which method do you prefer for level up? Experience points or milestone?
I'm 100% a milestone DM. I'm a milestone guy, plain and simple. I see some benefits for XP. I actually did a video here not too long ago on using XP to kind of control the overall, and in some ways to punish players, but not punish them for being players, but punish them for misbehaving, and to reward good players for that matter. I see some benefits in the XP systems. I tend to, if it's a level-based system like Dungeons and Dragons, I'm going to be milestone. Period, end of story. It makes my life a whole lot easier. Makes it a lot easier for me to balance encounters. Makes it a lot easier for me to make sure that I've got a nice, good ramp and difficulty in encounters. I don't have situations where people are finding ways to level up too fast, or I miscalculate this, that, or the other, and now they're too far behind for the next segment because they missed this over here and didn't get this XP. In systems like Cyberpunk, where you don't have levels, I tend to be a lot more towards the XP side on that. Like I'm absolutely in love with Artel Sorian's improvement point system in Cyberpunk Red, where it's you get a certain amount of improvement points based on how well you did in the last mission, and then you use that to buy your ranks and your skills to make your character better at this, that, or the other. And I also use in that one a bunch of ad hoc stuff where I'll say, this guy came up with a really cool idea for how to circumvent some kind of trap. Well, I'm going to say, all right, you're going to get 10 AP just for that particular skill, or 10 improvement points just for that particular skill. You can spend it on that skill and no other skill, but you're getting it for that because you use that skill in a unique way to circumvent this problem. And, I can use rewards like that. But I don't have to worry about breaking my characters like I do in an XP situation. Plus, it's a lot of math that's in my way unnecessary. I got enough stuff I got to take care of as a DM. I got to, I've already got to worry about, did I accidentally make them way too wealthy, way too fast? Are they going to start coming out and just doing crazy stuff when it comes to, money? I don't need that extra. I'm going to control where their level is, if nothing else.
Okay. In my game, my Sunday game, my regular weekly game, I do milestone. In my West Marches game, it's all XP. With 5e, the imbalance isn't as great as it was under old school AD&D. For me, I started my first AD&D experience was first edition and then second edition, and then I quit when 3 came out, and everybody moved to that, and I stopped playing and came back for 5th because I wanted to play again, and nobody wanted to run second edition or play second edition, so I had to start running 5th edition.
Good old 5th. I don't see how you could run West Marches milestone, to be honest. West Marches, I would think you would have to run XP just because you have all the different groups.
Yeah.
And XP, I think, is way more important in old school too.
Oh yeah.
Like if you're running old school, especially you're running D&D or AD&D, and you're having things like you got gold, gold investment and XP investment to level up, and having to find the find the wizard or the magic user rather to help you become the next highest level magic user and that sort of thing. It becomes a currency and it becomes more important, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
In like 3.5, it's just kind of arbitrary. And then like 4th and 5th edition, you're so video gamey that you may as well just have XP be a bar that they get to color in at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah.
Which there's a question for you, a thought of yours. I've looked at 4th edition as really being a spiritual successor to Chainmail and original D&D. If like when you look at the philosophy behind it and the way it's set up and what it's good for. I would say, I think that's the problem with 4th edition is it does not fit with the Hickman Revolution. It does not fit with storytelling and world building. It fits with dungeon crawling and more of a West Marches style play. Like say Chainmail or not Chainmail, but original Dungeons and Dragons and maybe the beginnings of 1st edition. What would you think about, what would you have to say on that?
I have no opinion because I've never looked at a 4th edition book. I have no idea what it says.
Fair enough.
I went straight from 2.5 to 5. I played as a player one time in third edition and didn't like it.
No, that's a pretty big jump. I mean,
Yeah,
can't answer if you ain't got the experience, right?
exactly. So I don't want to make something up and lie to you because I really can't give you an opinion because I don't have one.
Yeah.
I know Colville likes fourth edition, and I've seen a lot of hate for it online. But like I said, I've never even picked up a fourth edition book of any kind, so I have no idea.
It's I've kind of come to the idea that the reason people hate fourth edition is, like I said, it's terrible for collaborative storytelling, and that's what almost all of us are since like 1981.
Yeah,
So it's just a hack and slash miniatures war game is basically what fourth edition is. It's a miniatures combat game, and I don't like fourth edition. I think fourth edition is far and away the worst edition of Dungeons and Dragons. But I think a big part of the reason is because it's not what anybody expects when they pick up an AD&D book.
right. All right, we are running out of time because I am poor and I don't have the upgraded version of Zoom. So, do you have any final thoughts?
Not really. The big thing is I want to see more people playing, and more importantly, I want to see more game masters. I like to see people be creative, and just all I can say is play more games. You can go on Drive Through RPG, and you can find free downloads of so much stuff, and who cares if it's bad? If it's bad, then you have a fun time playing a bad game and you all joke and laugh about how terrible it was later. But that's really what I would say is that more people need to play more and quit worrying so much about everybody else in the world. That's but get out there, story tell, and be a game master. That's the big thing. Be a game master. You may go right back to being a player, but everybody needs to be a game master a few times to flex that muscle, to tell that story, and to see how other people play in it. And that's really the big one. And I guess the only other thing I would have to say is subscribe to my YouTube channel so I can, have my vanity project inflate my ego a little bit. Or, but check out Spirit Bear Studios. I'm just going to go ahead and throw that out there. I did a review of their game, Colonies and Conquerors, months ago. That is a pretty good little game. I've wanted to play test it for a while. I've had trouble finding a group of players to play test it so I can really dig into it in that way. But that guy, you can tell that he's done his homework. It's a pretty solid looking system. It's got some interesting mechanics in it. So check his stuff out and, then come back and tell me just how well it plays out with your group.
All right, Mr. Daniel, thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate having you here.
I appreciate you listening to me ramble.
That's what we're here for. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you next time.
More than anything, I'm just the kind of the thoughts and rants kind of person. I was rolling around one day. I do a lot of driving and for work and do a lot of driving in my day job. And I was like, I can sit here and rant about D&D instead of commenting on people's YouTube channels and commenting on Facebook posts and stuff like that. It's like I can just say my piece and record it while I'm rolling around. And that's what I started doing. And then I realized that the audio was just not the greatest thing in the world unless I just set my entire car up for it. So what I changed to doing was recording driving around and then using that as the background footage when I put it on my channel. And then I just record sitting right here at the desk.